Do you know what's in your vaccines? Surely the FDA and the World Health Organization have guidelines that show that they know what they're doing. How would you feel if there were things in your vaccines that you weren't aware of that have now come to light? You're not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to the Kiwi Rocket. Today we have molecular virologist Dr David Speicher, who comes from the University of Guelph in Canada. He's here today to talk about his new paper, Quantification of Residual Plasmid DNA and SV40 Promoter Enhancer Sequences in Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines from Ontario, Canada. So, Dr Speicher, are we all turning into mutants?
Joe, at this day and age, anything is possible.
I know. I cannot believe it. So, in your paper, which specific vaccines did you cover and which age groups did you cover in the scope of study?
This work is on 32 vaccine vials out of Canada, the Pfizer and Moderna, the first runs of the Wuhan, and then the valence and the bivalence. In our first year and put out October of 23, we looked at that at 27 vials, and this expanded that work into 32 vials and looked at as well the Pfizer XBB 1.5s.
That's good. So for our audience, could you please explain process 1 and process 2 and what they mean?
So these are RNA vaccines. And so all of the mRNA comes out of the DNA backbone. In the process 1, it's a PCR template of just spike, except it's an expensive, slow way of amplifying up DNA. And so what Pfizer and Moderna did is take a coli ring of the DNA known as a plasmid and put it in a E. coli bacteria and then amplified up that. It's a much faster, cheaper way to amplify DNA.
That's really disgusting.
So the sad part, and makes this just evil, is that all of Pfizer's clinical trial work at first is on process 1, and that does not contain things like the SV40 sequences. Once the vaccine was approved, they changed and used a plasmid out of Pfizer's Department of Gene Therapy. It's a gene therapy plasmid containing things like SV40, which is commonly used to insert DNA fragments into cellular DNA in the lab.
Dear God. That is
so it was clear that they knew what they were doing and did not disclose this at all. And therefore, it completely violated informed consent.
Oh, yeah, nobody would consent to a disgusting E. coli-ridden, DNA fragmented soup of grossness going into their arm.
And I've heard as well that, it's just DNA, in low amounts, it's not a big deal. If this is just naked DNA, outside of a lipid nanoparticle into the arm, it would have been fine. Except this is DNA and mRNA and double-stranded RNA and DNA and RNA hybrids in a lipid nanoparticle transfecting our cell. And in layman's terms, It means that the lipid nanoparticles, which is a fat bubble, contains inside it RNA and DNA, and it puts those things directly into our cells. And why it's so bad, if a SV40 enhancer, is that if you take 3 to 10 DNA fragments attached to a SV40 enhancer sequence, inject those into a non-dividing cell with an intact nuclear envelope, it will cross the wall and insert itself into the genome. So it's a big thing. Until this point in time, all of the other works out there focused mainly on Pfizer. Our work looked at 22 vials of Moderna. And even though there's no SV40 in Moderna, it's got a much higher load of DNA.
It's terrible.
So would you like a shot with SV40 or one with more plasmid DNA?
Oh my God. It's like choosing between the lethal injection and the electric chair.
Exactly.
What differences did you find between the different vaccines that you studied?
If we look at figure 2, the main figure, all of the Pfizer lots are very variable in the DNA loads. If we look at the first 4, those are purple top PBS-based vaccines, have a much higher adverse events, and it's possibly due to the buffer. And so Pfizer changed it, less short-term adverse events, except long-term health outcomes are simply unknown. And so is this going to cause a increased risk of cancer? Yes. Increased risk of immunological changes? Yes. And so we know LNP's toxic, spike toxic. There's so many mechanisms of harm, and it's not all DNA is linked to harm. There's so many other adverse events which get.
I guess we won't really know for quite a while as it starts to emerge.
I don't think we will know the full extent of harm caused in our lifetime.
Oh my gosh. What a legacy they've left.
That it is the largest health risk, health crisis caused in our lifetime.
Wow.
And we won't know the full extent of harms caused in our lifetime. And it's key because until this point in time, there's not been a good peer-reviewed PubMed index paper out there until now. And now it's there. Evidence is clearly on the record. And this is a hammer showing we have been lied to, and what they said about these vaccines was false. And it's now in an evidence-based, peer-reviewed scientific paper.
I'd love to see them start saying safe and effective now.
Well, as we all expect, the pub smear campaign has been launched against this, and all they have picked up so far is an error in a word in the abstract, and it says World Health Authorization and not World Health Organization. I am human. It's a word error. It does not affect the facts and the outcome of this paper.
I mean, if that's all they can find, then they sound pretty desperate, to be honest. Can they not find anything valid to argue against the findings of your paper?
Evidence is basically piling up, and things like this can no longer be ignored.
So, your experiment showed that you found residual DNA, plasmid DNA, 627 times above the safety limit for that. What is the current safety limit that you're supposed to work towards?
So the still safety, it used to be 10 picograms per dose. It got changed in 1993 up to 10 nanograms per dose, except it is 4 short pieces, less than 200 base pairs of naked DNA, and not DNA wrapped in a lipid nanoparticle. And therefore, all of these current levels must be reevaluated for use of lipid nanoparticles. And it's because lipid nanoparticles transfect all of this DNA into our cells. And it was shown if you put, again, as I've said, 3 to 10 copies of these into a cell, you can cause changes to that cell. In these vaccines, you've got around 500 billion DNA fragments attached to a SV40 enhancer and a lipid nanoparticles entering our cells. 500 billion.
Wow.
Copies. That's massive.
So in your study, I was wondering if you could explain qPCR versus fluorometry.
We've all heard PCR is a bad tool. We can't rely on it. The cycles are way too high. Well, it's a very good, specific, sensitive test. And did it ask one thing? Is this DNA sequence in my sample? It's for specific DNA, and therefore we used a fragment. We used a assay to pick up spike or origin of replication and the SV40 region on the plasmid. And so it's 3 separate things. And we did that as they have digested this DNA. It digests in random sites, variable spots, and therefore some sites you'll find more evidence, some less of it. And therefore it's best if you have multiple assays, look at those and work to get rough those. Pfizer only used a single PCR assay on one site, and that's it. And therefore, theirs under or how much was in their vaccines. Virometry is a dye-based test, and it picks up all the total amount of DNA in that sample. And in the past, in our first version of this work, we didn't show a DNA step. If we look at figure 3, we first tested the vaccine as it was, used a boil to lines open all of the lipid nanoparticles and use a RNase to wipe out all of the RNA in that sample and leave us with just DNA. And so our test picks up just DNA. And so as you see, it was zona went the high when things open, and then add it and it goes down. And so it's very clear based on that graph that Moderna has a much higher load of both RNA and DNA in their vaccines.
Grim. It's absolutely grim. What public safety moves would you like governments to adopt in light of this research?
Stop the shots. Pull these shots off of the market for sure. I am not anti-vax. I am not anti-science. I'm against things like this, which are rolled out and cause people harm. And therefore, all of this mRNA technology must be stopped.
If something's going to stop it, oh my God.
Well, evidence is clear. These things are causing people harm.
It's terrible. Is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to add about this terrible findings in your paper?
Just thankful that it's out. It's a very thorough thing of showing all the harms and stuff. And yeah, it's been a long time to get this far. I'm glad it's done. I just hope it will make a difference for good on a global scale, Joe. Too many have been harmed.
Too many have been harmed. That's so sad. The David Declaration.
I was asked to test 3 Australian vials, and I did, and those had high amounts of DNA there. No other lab would do it, and so I did. And the Russell Broadbent's team wrote it and basically called for an end to the shots, named things after myself and the work. And based on that, the Northco group launched their campaign. And in Canada, we launched Call to Halt 19. It's call with a 2 halt 19.ca. And all those are called to halt these shots based on DNA and the SV4T and the harms caused, and it calls for support of the vaccine injured.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. So how else can people support your work? Do you have...
Well, I have a give, send, go. None of this work is paid for or funded. All of the info is on my website, davidspeicher.com, and help and support to help us keep this work going.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you've done and your commitment to saving lives and bringing truth, speaking truth to the world. That is fantastic.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for being on the Kiwi Rocket.
Hey, it's always wonderful to be here with yourself and to those living over across the pond.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.